I didn't want to be made fun of, and I didn't want anyone to observe my mom when she was having her cycling. So I was very protective of her and protective of the family secret.
Be Inspired Podcast. Real stories from real people. Sharing stories of love and loss, struggles and perseverance, laughter and tears, and overcoming adversity.
The issue of mental health continues to dominate the national headlines, whether it's gun violence or depression. Our guest on Be Inspired this time around is an author and an advocate in dealing with mental health issues across the country. Hi, I'm Burt Barron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And we welcome you to Be Inspired. Lisa, our guest this time around, I can't wait to check this book out here called Breaking Into My Life. I cannot wait to hear the story of Michelle Dickinson, who is with us here today.
Michelle, I had the pleasure of meeting you a couple of years ago, and we spoke at length. And as with all of our guests, they all have such amazing stories of overcoming, and we say it all the time, overcoming adversity, but it's through their experiences like yours, Michelle, that you are here. Who better to help others and to, tell us really what it's like about dealing with depression. And it just takes a lot of courage, and you just seem so at peace right now. I know we'll talk about a few changes that have gone on since we last spoke, few major changes actually, but I guess we can start off with talking about your childhood, which really shapes you. You think your life is going to go one way, and really it goes another. So tell us what it was like growing up, having to take care of your mom.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I love your message and what you're up to. So
Thank you.
I'm honored to be here to share with you my story. So I grew up with a mother who had bipolar disorder. And what that meant for me as a child was I had to experience her rapid cycling of mania to depression. And not by a choice of my own, I was kind of given the responsibility to really care for her and look after her, especially in moments when she was extremely fragile and just not able to function, but not sick enough to be hospitalized. So I was on this roller coaster of an experience of really experiencing what her bipolar was like, through my entire childhood into my young adult years. So,
and at the time when you're young and you experience this, there's a lot of shame with that, with your mom. The other kids' mothers aren't really like that.
Right.
Or, I have to run home and check on my mom. There's a lot of pressures with that.
Yeah.
And how did that affect you?
Yeah, there's a lot of, shame is something that's attached to mental health challenges, shame and fear. And so, I had this responsibility of keeping the secret and not letting anyone know because I didn't want to be made fun of, and I didn't want anyone to observe my mom when she was having her cycling. So I was very protective of her and protective of the family secret. So it definitely did force me to carry that responsibility and burden and almost like distract me from just being a kid in a lot of instances.
Yeah, I don't think people really have a full appreciation, Michelle, of someone who is particularly a young person when you have a parent that has issues like these, and just the long-term and really significant impact it has on someone who's a kid that shouldn't have this burden and their responsibility in this time of their life. And this is something that can be damaging and have lasting effects for people for a long time. And I don't know if people really fully appreciate just the long-term ramifications of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I always was proud. I had family members and friends that would say, look at you, you kind of navigated that and you're doing okay. You're a contributing member of society. You're doing good in the world, whatever. And I thought, okay, well, I survived, but the ramifications of that still show up in my life. I'm still in therapy. therapy. I still look for opportunities to find my voice, because as a little girl, when you are doing everything in your power to try to keep your mom at peace, you forego raising your hand and saying, hey, I need something. So, the struggle to constantly like evolve and understand, well, why don't I speak my truth? Why don't I do things? And that's just because of how I was groomed with her care.
And at the time when you were young and your mom, you probably didn't even know she had bipolar.
No.
You didn't even know what bipolar was.
Right.
And so that you take the blame and you internalize it.
Absolutely.
That your mom not knowing what she had. Now you can look back and we'll talk about a pivotal point in your life where you forgave your mom.
Yeah.
And that's huge because
Absolutely.
for yourself. But what role did your dad play, Michelle? in
Yeah.
this?
So my dad, and I think I'm so grateful that we live today where people are openly talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And there's more knowledge, and the internet provides such foundation if you want to learn about a specific mental illness. My dad had a limited understanding of it, and he was the primary breadwinner. So he worked a lot, and so put a lot of responsibility around the home and my mom on me. And his understanding, I think, of the mental illness was very limited. And so when I reflect on things that he would say or do, snap out of it, that you can't tell someone dealing with a mental illness to snap out of it. Or he would lead me to believe that my behavior was directly going to correspond with her having a manic episode. So then I would start to believe, do I really have the control of that? And maybe if I was just a good girl,
Yeah.
I would help. But so those types of things, when I was writing the book, that surfaced, made me realize he really did have a limited understanding. But he never left my mother's side and was the person that would have to drive her to carry her clinic for shock therapy. So imagine that experience as a spouse, how hard that was for him. So, my heart goes out to him, but I also know he had limited understanding.
Sure.
I'm glad we finally made the distinction. And it seemed like it took a few generations, Michelle, and maybe you saw this too, where we stopped blaming people for being sick.
Yeah.
There was a time where, like you mentioned, the whole snap out of it thing, where if someone was depressed or whatever issue they had, it was their fault,
Right.
Without realizing that this is an illness. This is a sick person. If it was a broken bone, you'd get a cast on them and you'd show some compassion and you'd help them along.
Yes.
But for some reason, when you see someone that deals with mental issues, but it used to just sort of be like, it's nothing, they'll be fine.
Right.
But now we realize that this is an illness and
Right.
this is a disease, and these are sick people that really need help.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we've come to that turning point. Did you witness that over your lifetime, where that transition started to sort of happen in our society?
I mean, I think, yeah. Look at the celebrities that are openly speaking out. I think they're really helping people who are. If you're just a fan of someone like Lady Gaga, or you're a fan of the football player, the Eagle, who said, listen, I'm leaving the field, I'm dealing with my anxiety. I think those are perfect examples of, we are moving in the right direction, where people are starting to say, oh, wow, man, my favorite celebrity is openly talking about this. Maybe it's okay for me to acknowledge I'm dealing with anxiety. So I think we're moving in the right direction for sure.
And I think there was a time where, unfortunately, that was perceived as being a weak person.
Right.
Like you don't have the backbone to deal with your own issues, you know.
Right.
And particularly, I think for men, it was like, listen, if I appear vulnerable, this is not good for me. I'll be perceived as being sort of a weak person. And I think getting over that stigma has been a major step and a big breakthrough in dealing with the issues of mental illness. I hope it continues. I really do, because I think we've seen great strides made over the last 20, 30 years. And just rather than shutting people out with mental illness, open the arms, embrace them, help them. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are afraid of it too. They're afraid, if they get too close or something that, they couldn't deal with it. I know it caught up with you, Michelle, later years. You went on, you got married. Were you the only child?
I was. I had two cousins that lived with me for about a short period of time, but I was my parents' only child.
Okay, so that really a lot of responsibility there. So then you got married, you were married, and you went to work for Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, so I started my career working at IBM and eventually gravitated to the pharmaceutical industry and worked in the pharmaceutical industry for about 19 years.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And didn't you start something with HR and you started
Yeah.
a depression help
So
group.
I worked. So I worked for a very large Fortune 500 company, pharma company, and I was at the time that my book was actually being published and released. We were starting to build the largest and fastest growing employee resource group for mental health.
Wow.
To eradicate the stigma within the company, and that was just a tremendous experience to witness the things that we were doing to get people to talk about it, to reach out to the EAP resources, to humanize mental health. And we made a lot of progress and did a lot of great things to remove the stigma. And, and it taught me a lot, for sure.
I think corporate America is finally realizing that these are human issues that we're talking about here. And you mentioned about getting over the stigma of mental health, that a lot of these companies now have, which I love the title of Chief Diversity Officer, where it's like, let's be inclusive. Let's open up and really just sort of be reflective of the world around us. And when you look at big corporations who, again, always had this impression, this image of being just cold and uncaring, when I hear about big companies that really care about people and deal with issues on a one-to-one level, I think it's a good direction to go in. And I know some of the people that you had worked for there, and it's very refreshing to see that this is the new normal. This is the new world. There's a song where they say, "Welcome to the new age."
Yeah.
I think this is it.
I mean, when you think about diversity and inclusion means, inclusion of people with invisible disabilities as
Absolutely.
much as it means someone with a physical disability, visible. So I think it's really important that we make sure that employees can have the ability to go to work, not have to put their game face on, can really just show up and be the best version of themselves, and that they are welcomed for that. I mean, it seems basic, right? But you'll keep an employee engaged, you'll keep them on the
Happier.
job,
Yeah.
and you'll keep them happier if you welcome them for all they are.
Absolutely.
We'll come back. We'll talk more with our special guest, Michelle Dickinson, who was here. We'll talk about the great work that she is doing now and some more information about her book, too, called Breaking Into My Life, and why it is a must read. We'll talk about that coming up next on Be Inspired.
Moving is difficult. At Lowe's, it doesn't have to be. For all of your residential and commercial moving needs, contact 732-775-4118 or get a free FaceTime estimate. Lowe's, proudly serving New Jersey for over 96 years. IgA Nephropathy Foundation of America is a patient-centric organization dedicated to finding a cure and better treatment options for IgA kidney disease. If you or someone you know was recently diagnosed or to donate, please visit IGAN.org. Buying, selling, or renting a home can be daunting, especially for first-time home buyers. Trusted since 1985, Diane Turton Realtors award-winning associates will provide the information you need about the market rate, neighborhood, local attractions, and more. Call 1-877-388-7866 or visit DianeTurton.com. In this new day and age of online meetings and presentations, you need the best team at the ready. Whether broadcasting your Zoom meetings to Facebook Live or live streaming a fundraiser event, Surreal Streaming Services, with over 10 years of experience, can add confidence to your next live stream event. Call or text 646-498-8888 or visit sur-real.com.
Mental health advocate and author Michelle Dickinson is with us here on Be Inspired. And there's a thing that they have in horse racing. You know anything about horse racing, Lisa? You don't
little
seem
bit,
like
not-
the horse racing type.
I
but
am, but I don't always win. So.
I bet on a horse and he just stood there one time. And I never went to a horse race again. But there's something that's good in horse racing called the trifecta.
Yes.
And I understand that Michelle, our guest, has a trifecta in her field that she works in. I'm hoping she could explain that to us and what that's all about.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I say I have the trifecta because, up until 2 years ago, I just had the experience that I had was growing up with my mom who was bipolar, and I was adopted. So I thought, well, I'm immune. I'm not going to have what she had. Well, life kind of showed up and threw me a curveball. And for the first time at 47, I was diagnosed with depression and having to navigate that and work and just do life. So I had that experience, and then building the fastest employee resource group for mental health. So I have this like 3-lens perspective on mental illness that I like to remind people. I know what it's like to care for someone, and I know what it's like to experience it. And I'm really aware of what works and what doesn't work in the corporate setting or in communities when you want to shift culture, basically.
Sure. Yeah, and you make it okay to not be okay.
Yeah,
With
absolutely.
folks coming in there. So then after that, you had another change. Sometimes you think, I love this and it's breaking into my life. And you probably thought, now,
Yeah.
here I am thinking I was going on one path.
Yeah.
And then life just takes another, in another direction. So
Yeah.
what happened after that?
So if you would have asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have never said a mental health advocate. My dad got me a great start in corporate America working for IBM, and then I moved to the big pharma world. Well, last year I found my position being eliminated in my corporate job, and I said to myself, okay, so this is a curveball. What do I
Here
do
we
with
go,
it?
another reinvention now, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Tremendous opportunity, though, because all the work I'd been doing with my book and really causing change in my company, and then navigating my own mental illness really set me up to be like, okay, so now's the time. Now is the time I'm going to create my company, Trifecta Mental Health, and make a difference. And so that's what I'm up to. I created that, and I'm out to cause change in communities and companies. And most recently, I'm partnering with a police sergeant to bring mental health de-escalation and resilience training to first responders.
That's excellent.
Yeah, really
Excellent.
excited.
That's just another something else in the toolbox of the first responder that could save a life and make a difference, and that's what it's about. Writing the book, Michelle, Breaking Into My Life, kind of therapeutic for you. This was a chance to sort of, I sort of equate writing a book as you have to interview yourself to kind of put the words on paper. Was that kind of the process for you?
It was. And so I always say this, like, I'm not an author. I'm just a girl that had a story. I wrote this book over 4 long years because it was incredibly cathartic, because I had to literally relive every experience, because I wanted my reader to really understand what I was living through and what I was experiencing, so they could get an understanding of mental illness unlike they ever had. And so that really forced me to close my eyes and relive experiences that were not so pleasant or easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that a lot of authors, once they work through their experiences in the past and you write the book, it's sort of like a gift to yourself as well as a gift to others.
Yeah.
Because to use your problems that you had growing up, and then experiencing mental illness. What helped you, Michelle, with dealing with your own mental illness and depression?
Yeah, I want to answer that, but I want to go back to the other question that you said earlier. You'd said about my mother. If I would have written this book 4 years earlier, or even, it took me 4 years to write it, but if I would have written it maybe a year earlier, I would have been in a very different place, because I was very angry at my mother. Sure. So I needed to get to the point where I had healed myself enough to sit down and write the book and come from a space of love and compassion and forgiveness, because before that I didn't have that. But to answer your question, I gravitated to physical exercise. That's what helped me.
That's great.
My doctor is very conservative, and when I asked him for medication to deal with my depression, he was like, no, you need to navigate this, and I'm going to be here to support you, but you need to find healthy ways to manage it yourself. And so I threw myself into training for a triathlon with my cousin, and exercising, and just really just taking care of myself. And it helped. It really did.
I thought maybe treadmill, but no, she goes right into the triathlon.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it helped.
That's good for you.
Yeah.
And is your mom around now, and your
No,
dad?
both my parents have passed away.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But isn't that such a relief to know that you came to a place of forgiveness with your
Yes.
mom? Because then it would have been so much guilt, and
Yes.
so much added guilt to that, and so much more to deal with.
Yeah, and opportunities like this, and opportunities to speak and tell my story, helps honestly keep my mother's spirit alive.
Sure.
She did the best she could with what she had, and it's sort of like turning lemons into lemonade, and I'm actually taking that experience and turning it around and helping someone else not suffer, and it's in her name, so I get to celebrate her every time I talk about it.
And to be on this program today, and the book, a couple of platforms that you've been able to kind of share your story. The TED Talk, these TED Talks can be wildly popular.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
That was amazing. It was an opportunity I didn't expect. I had a colleague of mine nominate me. It was a private platform in my company. So she nominated me, and then I was partnered with a TED coach, and I learned how to give my TED Talk, and it was powerful, and amazing to be on the red dot and
Scary.
to be able, and terrifying, of course,
sure.
terrifying.
They call
But,
fans of those TED heads. Is that what they call
Yeah,
them? Is
TED
that true?
heads,
I didn't
yeah.
just make that up, did I? Is that,
No, I've heard
okay,
that.
okay.
I have heard that. Yeah, I love TED Talks. There's so many subjects out there and who better to hear it from than someone who's gone through it.
Yeah.
Again,
Absolutely.
through life experiences.
And if I didn't do the TED Talk, I wouldn't have gotten the warm reception and the confirmation that I should write my story, right? Because I told my story on the TED stage and everyone, was like, wow, that's amazing. That actually pushed me in the direction to write my book. So it all unfolded as it was supposed to.
If you could give some advice to the younger you, what would it be?
Oh, well, I would have to say, love yourself, speak your truth. Don't ever compromise what you want. Speak up, ask for what you want. And definitely love yourself for all of your imperfections and all your flaws. They're perfect.
That's a beautiful way to put it, because too many of us don't realize till it's too late.
Yes.
We need to love ourselves.
Yes.
Until then we can love others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you ready to dive in and write another book?
I don't
Was
know.
the experience what you wanted it to be?
I don't know. I am so committed to causing change in the community and in the world that I really want to focus my energies on that, because I think that we have too many people that suffer every day and don't have the courage to speak up. So I really want to put my energy toward causing change and ending some suffering for people with mental illness.
Like teens too.
Absolutely.
I know, huge with teens nowadays. And we didn't have social media years ago. And, now it's even more so. With them. A lot of pressure out there.
Terrific. All right. Mental health advocate and now author of the book Breaking Into My Life, Michelle Dickinson. Great to have you here. Online, Barnes & Noble's, the big booksellers, we can get this book here?
Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. But you can also visit me on my website if you want to know more about what I'm doing, and that's MichelleLeeDickinson.com.
Well, we'll be sure to check it out. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you for having me so much.
Thanks, Michelle, for helping so many.
I'm Burt Barron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And thank you for watching Be Inspired.
Be Inspired with your hosts Burt Barron and Lisa Anderson Puleo. Director Rod Weber. Created and produced by Michael R. Doyle. Co-producers Lisa Anderson Puleo and Erwin Sternberg. Executive producers Sean Sternberg and Rod Weber. Editor Rebecca Gruber. Filmed at New Beginnings Foundation, Wall Township, New Jersey. And thanks to our sponsors, Loewy's Moving Service, IgA Nephropathy Foundation of America, Diane Turton Realtors, and Surreal Stream Services. We here at Be Inspired Podcast would like to dedicate Season 3 to all of those who lost their lives to COVID-19 and honor the first responders and healthcare professionals for their continued sacrifices every day. You all are our heroes. We are stronger together, and in times of adversity, we encourage you to lean on Be Inspired Podcast. Our prayers are with you all.